Good afternoon, beautiful people of planet Earth and all other interdimensional entities across this wide cosmos. Here we are again at Sacred Space, Titania's Realm. It's Tuesday, the 23rd of December 2025. If you follow, like most of modern contemporary society, the Gregorian calendar. Depends on which side of the planet you're on too. Some of you are probably still in the 22nd of December. Not quite sure about that. I think it's about 9 hours difference. But anywho, the time, Brisbane time. Since I live in Brisbane, I have to go with their time and not your time and not the cosmic time and not infinite time. Oh, wait a minute, let's rewind that a bit. Of course I'm on infinite time, one day at a time, one breath at a time. You can tell it's hot because my brain's frying and I'm extrapolating from the ether as I do. So I've been a very good mama tea. Rati came early because of the public holiday, so she came and cleaned today. And, she's a beautiful person. She really is a wonderful woman. She went into the bird room. I had them in the back room. They were singing to her and it was just delightful. Anyway, I said to her, when you finish work and when you leave, I'm going to drag my sorry carcass off to Aldi to buy groceries, which I didn't really want to do, but I bought a lot of groceries, people. I bought a lot. I figure I'll just stock up on things that I might like or might need because, I'm sick of grinding fucking poverty and worrying about money. It's a drag. It's a fucking drag. But anyway, I bought lots of nice fruit. I bought watermelon and rock melon and pawpaw, which I actually bought for the birdie boys. You're getting some yummy fruit for the next week. And thanks, Ma, we'll get sick of that. I bought blueberries. What else did I buy? Strawberries. And I bought meat, enough to carry me through really only enough to carry me through for the week, really, by all the gods. But, and I stocked up on all sorts of nonsensical things. I got quite a shock when I got till was a lovely young man serving with bright green eyes. And he said, hasn't it been hot? And I went, oh, you're finding it hot too? He said, yesterday was dreadful. And he's just this young boy, to me he was a young boy, probably, I don't know, 22, 23. I said, oh, you're struggling from the heat. He says, have I struggled with the heat? He said, and I'm born and bred in North Queensland. I said, oh, where do you come from? He said, a town called Ayr. He said, it's only got 5,000 population. He said, but I can't take the heat now. I said, you must have acclimatised to Brisbane, being cooler than up north, But he had the most beautiful eyes and he was a really nice... The staff there at Aldi, I've noticed in recent months, they're young, usually younger, a lot younger than I, but they're just so friendly and chatty and actually want to have a little bit of a chat to you, treat you like you're a human. And it's just so lovely. It's like people are just blossoming, It's probably post-COVID and all that horror when everyone was feeling terrorised and oppressed and coerced and threatened, and now people are just sparkling. It's actually lovely, especially to see it in the young. They deserve to be happy after what we were put through by all the gods. But yeah, they just really chat to me. The other young lass last time I went was very chatty and friendly too, and so it makes it quite more of a pleasurable experience because I have a deep-seated abhorrence of supermarkets. I always have since childhood. So, it just made it really pleasurable. And the good thing about Aldi is, even though I did spend a lot, they're a little bit cheaper than the other supermarkets. So I hate to think what I would have paid in there. in Woolies or Coles. So, but it was quiet, and I said to the young man, "Oh, I'll just throw it in the trolley and I'll pack it." He goes, "No, just pack it here." He said, "It's quiet. I don't think you'll have anybody coming, so you'll have time to pack everything." That was also very kind, because that's the stressful part of Aldi, is trying to pack everything as you're buying to get out of there. But no, he was very kind, very lovely, so I can't complain. And but he said, "Yes, it's been so dreadfully hot." I said, "But you're young." He said, "What do you mean?" I went, "Well, I keep thinking it's all me feeling so woeful because I'm old, and, things, you just grizzle more when you're older and everything hurts, and, you become a bit kind of negative at times." He said, "No, you're not negative. It's very, very hot." I said, "Well, thank you for confirming that, because sometimes I think it's just in my mind and it's just me." He said, No, I'm suffering too." He said, "The good thing is that being at work there in air conditioning." I said, "Oh, I do feel sorry for you though, because you're going to come out in the heat when you're tired, you've worked all day, you can't relax, you're out in the scathing heat." And he just looked at me and nodded. But anyway, lovely, lovely young man. So, what else have I got to tell you? That's about all that's happened today, nothing terribly exciting. It was a bit of a schlep bringing all the groceries up the stairs and putting them in the fridge, and then I discovered my freezer had been left a little bit open, so that was a freak out. So I've wedged everything back in there, and hopefully it's holding. Might just run and check actually, because I've got some, nice things in there. I don't want to lose it. Just double check that it's all freezing, staying frozen. Yes, it's all good. I worked on my spinning wheel last night and spun some more of that lovely white alpaca fleece. So that's I'm slowly getting that down to, working through the quantity. I had a big pillowcase full, so getting that turned into wool. So I'm very proud of myself. I've been very, very productive indeed, and very contented in a way. We had the most delicious storms blow through. About just after Rati arrived, at just after 10 when she arrives. And she says, "Do you think it will hail?" She was worried about her car, which is understandable. And I said, "Oh no, I don't think it will hail." And I said, "But it could, because it's been so very, very hot." But anyway, I opened up the windows, but the rain came pouring, and so to shut the windows again. But I opened the front door and it sounded like I was having an orgasm, people of Earth. The wind was blowing the cold air right into the front door with the rain behind. I was just like, oh. Rati came in, she wondered what I was doing. And then she went, "Oh, that is lovely too." And I went, "I know, but it sounds bad." And she just laughed. At least we can laugh about it as women. But it was just so beautiful and refreshing, the fresh air coming through. And so that was a lovely thing. But apparently we're going to get more storms tonight at 6 o'clock. But here's the thing. The Weather Bureau did not predict that there would be storms this morning. They said 5 p.m. And when I got up this morning, I looked out and I thought, we're going to get storms soon. Skies are all black and grey, and it was sort of hints of thunder. And I kept checking the, Bureau of Meteorology. 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Now they say 6 o'clock. Wow, did they get that wrong? Because, they blew through this morning, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you, Thor and Odin. Hail the All-Father, and hail Thor and Odin because it cooled the air down at least a little bit. It's starting to heat up again though. And the trouble with storms in, the hot summer is you get the humidity afterwards when it heats up. So it really is a bit like living in hell, It's like perfect one day and scathing hot, scorching hot, and the hellfires of hell itself, brimstone and sulphur, just about. But anyway, it could be worse. I could live in a very, very cold country, and then I'd be grizzling about that too. Speaking of cold countries, let us continue with Amanda Scott's Boadicea, Dreaming the Serpent's Spear. And we're up to chapter 10. I did well reading 2 chapters yesterday, given how weak and ill and overheated and fecking off I felt. So there you go. I won't promise you 2 chapters today though. We'll just see what happens. Got to go with Mama T's flow. Some days I'm riding high, flying high, and other days I'm just like, Right, here we go. Chapter 10. Sigfa, elder daughter of the Boadicea, made the threefold call of the owl at Valerius's signal. A relay of hidden warriors passed it on down through the mist and the fringes of the forest to the place at the farthest end of their line where her brother, Kunomar, lay on his belly under the winter-flayed roots of a fallen oak. Kunomar lay on ground that judded to the stamp of marching feet. The legionaries of the 3rd cohort of the 9th Legion, who marched a spear's length from his face, continued to sing the 15th stanza of the marching song they had begun when the first ranks passed him by. They did not hear the owl, and if they had, they would not have known what it meant. Kunomar heard it and knew exactly what it meant, and did nothing. No part of him looked human, nor did he feel it. He was naked but for his knife belt and the king band on his arm, which had been his mother's last gift to him in the winter before the procurator's destruction of their steading. Bear's grease coated him from the soles of his feet to the line of his brow, tinted with woad to render it densely grey. Bands of white lime ringed his eyes and made skull marks on his cheeks. His hair was stiffened with pig's fat and white lime, making a pale grey scythe that stood up from his scalp. Sounds a bit like a mohawk, doesn't it? Maybe. In the past day, since the burning of the watchtower, he had discarded even the feathers that marked the kills of his past. That act alone severed him from all that had gone before, setting him apart from his peers more than his bloodline or his missing ear could ever have done. Misgiven and woad-held, he was a warrior without any ties to the living, with nothing to fight for but the battle itself, nothing to sway him but the breath of the gods, nothing to care about but the next breath and the next and the next. The elders of the Caledonii had taught him the ways of discipline that allowed him to hold his mind still and empty, that he might become a part of the earth. Since dawn, he had held to it, with only the occasional lapse, but the owl's cry brought with it a memory of the night's dreaming that would not be shaken off. Oh, I'm going to segue here. That's what I wanted to tell you about. I wrote about it on Facebook and I told Rati about it, but it was really quite astonishing. It's just a trivial thing, but astonishing, the Jungian synchronicities, people of Earth. So, I went to bed late last night and I was utterly exhausted from the heat. My body was fatigued and I laid down. I put my CPAP mask on, as I do before I go to sleep, and I was feeling encumbered and smothered by it, and the air I was breathing in was warm, and anyway I thought, this is not going to work, I can't sleep. I lay there for an hour, my brain just came online, ding, and I had all sorts of really negative thoughts, like telling me that I was in the timeline that means I'm going to die soon, which, may or may not be true, but I'm lying there thinking, why am I thinking these awful, negative, horrible thoughts, And they were giving me examples of events and milestones in the past couple of years to show me how the timeline, where it kind of diverted. And so I'm lying there kind of freaking out, to be honest, because it was quite accurate information in many ways. And anyway, and then they showed me, it was almost like I wasn't sure, I wasn't conscious of an entity communicating with me per se, but it was almost like a third person going, why are you wearing that? And you're not comfortable and you can't sleep. And they said, you look like that rhinoceros beetle, like the dream you had like nearly 3 years ago. It was about 20 months ago, actually. And I'm like, yeah, I hate it too, but what can I do? Anyway, the thought came to my mind to go and check the humidifying component of the ResMed machine, that pumps the air into my lungs. And it was on 30 degrees Celsius, which would have been the outside temperature in the room. And I was like, well, fuck this. I'm never going to get to sleep breathing in hot air, feeling hot and smothered. So I reduced the humidifier down to 27 degrees. And it didn't happen immediately, but gradually it felt like the air I was breathing in was a little bit cooler. Whether it actually does that, I'm not even sure. But anyway, it felt slightly better. Anyway, I'm lying there on my bed and my mind's going haywire, like 1,000 electrical bombs have gone off, like fireworks. And I'm like, this is not going to get me to sleep, is it? And I contemplated getting up and taking a Valium just to calm me down. But I thought, Valium is not a sleeping tablet. It's for calming you down. It's not for settling you to sleep. And I'm not going to do that. And I don't want to become reliant on medications, especially psych medications, ever again. And I only keep the Valium for actual extreme emotional distress, if someone really pushes my buttons or I get very distressing news, I might resort to it then. So I'm lying there going, no, I don't want Valium, and I'm just going to have to breathe deeply. I just need to relax. And I'm trying to like mindfully calm my nervous system down, which was no dice. I was like a blazing circuitry gone online. Could have fired several nuclear reactors last night with my brain alone. It's what it felt like anyway. So I'm lying there, physically lying there thinking, I just want to sleep, I just want to sleep, I just want to sleep. And my brain reminded me, my brain or some external entity reminded me of a dream I had shortly before I was gifted the ResMed machine. And it was a dream in which there was an enormous rhinoceros beetle walking up a garden path. And there were men walking. It was sort of late on sunset, and there were 3 men walking ahead of me, and they were all terrified of this beetle. And I just went along and crushed it under my foot, and of course blood and guts splattered everywhere. And I remembered the dream because I thought, this dream's very significant, but I don't know what the rhinoceros beetle means. And then about 6 or 8 weeks later, I was gifted the CPAP machine, and the mask I have looks like a rhinoceros beetle because it has this kind of horn part that goes up where the strap onto your head, and it's actually fucking hideous, but what do I care? It's to keep me alive, right? So I laughed when I received that mask, because it was a close enough analogy to what a rhinoceros beetle looks like actually. And I thought, and in the dream I was crushing it as if to say, don't comply with that therapy, but I kind of felt obliged to comply because they promised me it would help me with my bladder issues, and it would help me with my cognition and my motivation, and I'd breathe better and blah, 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 blah. So anyway, it'll be 18 months on the 4th of January coming up that I've been on the therapy, and I'm a little bit better, not as good as I anticipated, but I am, there is an improvement. But anyway, so you can imagine my shock. I'm lying in bed last night saying to this being or entity or spirit that was reminding me of that dream and suggesting maybe I might like to reduce the temperature, which I did actually take heed of and do. And I'm like, why am I being told about a dream from, like 20 months ago? Really, it's odd. So anyway, I lay there having all sorts of other very dark thoughts about being on the timeline that means I'm going to die soon. And I'm like, bullshit, I'm going to die soon. I've outlived everything. There's no reason why I'm going to die unless something, unexpected happens, which I hope not. Terrorist attacks, jealous, envious ex-lovers, some inordinate evil that you don't anticipate. Life is strange and you never know what's around the corner. But I was shunting that out of my mind, going, don't be silly, you're perfectly fine, relax, go to sleep. So what if you look like a rhinoceros beetle? You've been looking like that for 18 months now. Like, what difference does it make, So, and I had to get up to pee about 4 times. So I had a bad night with my bladder too, which was all very odd because I've been doing well at night. I've not had to get up the last few nights, which was lovely. So anyway, here's where it gets weird, people of Earth. I get up this morning and I'm overdue cleaning the fish pond filter. And I thought I'd better do it today and, before the storms come, because I could see them blowing over, and I better get on with it. There's no excuses. It's so hot, but I just become very demotivated and kind of lethargic and lazy, and everything hurts when I wake up in the mornings too, like my wrist hurts. It's still tender now. but hurts most of the morning, and then it usually clears up, but it's tender because I had to carry in the heavy bags of groceries, so I've aggravated it. And then I get this pain all under my rib cage now, all around my ribs and round to my back. All the bones actually ache. So I'm thinking, well, that must be some kind of inflammation in the body, and I've gained weight and I need to exercise more and eat healthy. I need to really, get strict with myself because I'm not actually feeling all that fucking fabulous lately. And it's aggravated by the heat as well. So anyway, I thought, well, I must do the fish pond because otherwise I'll put it off and I'll put it off and I'll put it off. And it's not fair on the two little fish that swim around in it. And I like to keep my pond nice and pristine because I love to look at it when I walk past, and I just like it to be perfect, But at the top, waterfall that I have on the pond, the crows like to drop things in it, and usually it's bread or last week they'd shredded apart a cane toad, which I was distressed to discover because I worried the toxins might kill my fish, but they seem to have survived it, thank the goddess, and I must have got it out in time. So anyway, it annoys me when they drop white bread in it too, because that helps create the algae, So I'm forever scooping things out that the crows drop in it to soften it for their own purposes, because they're very intelligent birds and they're innovative and they know how to survive. So anyway, I go down and I turn the pond off and I move the metal grates I keep on top of it to keep, birds from taking my fish and prevent children from getting in and drowning as well, which the neighbours were all het up about that at one stage. I said, if your kid gets in through that, it's suicided because you'd have to physically lift everything off. They just stared at me, Honestly, people are so stupid. But anyway, I move all the metal grates off and I go to pull down the two waterfalls that I have there that actually used to belong to another pond. And I got the shock of my life because on the top of the waterfall where the water comes, sprinkling down over all the marbles and glass balls I've got in there, was a deconstructed, ripped apart, black, shiny rhinoceros beetle, complete with its horn. And I just looked at it and went, that's so weird, because the spirits were telling me about that dream and going on about rhinoceros beetles. And I don't see them in my garden usually. It's very rare to see one. And here was one, torn to shreds by the crows, guts everywhere, in the top of my waterfall in my pond. I was so freaked out, I was like, oh! But anyway, I just tipped it out into the garden because the ants will come and take, whatever's edible left of that rhinoceros beetle. And then I went back to grab, the bit of the horn because I thought maybe I'll find a way to preserve it somehow, because it seems important to the spirits that I have this black talismanic magical amulet that represents actually the CPAP mask, which is clear plastic, not black, but it's the shape of it. Anyway, so I looked at that and I was like, what? What's the odds that I was being shown that last night and the very next morning there's a dead one in my pond? It's like, what? Anyway, I just carried on and cleaned the filter. I've got to go to Bunnings. I need a new bucket because the plastic is actually rotting and breaking apart. But, it's lasted about 2 years, so it's okay. I use a bucket full to put the lava rocks in and to filter. and I drill holes in the bottom. And so I've just got to make another one, but it's not no big deal. It's neither here nor there. It's just a hassle to have to, you have to make another one now. But anyway, I cleaned it up, made use of it again, but I do need to buy another one ASAP. And I need to buy some more of the red lava rocks as well, because some of them have just crumbled away and got smaller and smaller, and I need bigger ones. So I've got to do that. That's another expense, people of Earth. I might put that off till next fortnight, because I will see. Anyway, so I cleaned it all out, put it all back, put the grates back on, put the waterfall back up on it. And I was just still kind of scratching my head about rhinoceros beetles being a theme, and being crushed or mutilated or destroyed. So maybe it's a sign that the spirits want me to heal from the CPAP, but I haven't healed completely, and it's taken me 18 months. But maybe they're telling me that there'll come a time when, you know, I actually do heal and I don't need it anymore. Wouldn't that be marvellous? Oh my goodness. It's been a long, hard battle just dealing with that. But I'm glad that they showed me the reminder about the dream, because that caused me to then think about maybe I should turn the humidifier down in temperature so it's not so uncomfortable breathing in hot air, which did help slightly. So anyway, back to the story, people of Earth. But as I wrote on Facebook this morning, it was a real Jungian synchronicity. Dream, being reminded of the dream and then having the creature mutilated in a pond like that the very next morning. Why can't I dream of winning squillions on the lotto and have that come true the very next day? Have to afford to buy the ticket, don't you? Damn it. Anyway, you kind of have to laugh. Also, I don't really believe in gambling. Occasionally buy lotto tickets, but it's not something I want to actually make a habit of. And you very rarely win anything anyway. Right, where are we? Even as he strove for emptiness, Kuno-Ma smelled again the fetid breath of the bear, and was back in the nightmare that had woken him the past 3 nights. This was not a dream of the she-bear, beast of all mystery and glory, to whom he had given his soul, but a rank, injured male which had been hunted into a blind-ended cave and had turned at bay in all its pain and fury, raking out with claws that stretched and stretched and reached past the warrior who came to kill it, to the injured child, his sister. And reached past the warrior who came to kill it, to the injured child, his sister, who had been sent to the cave for safety and was only now waking and standing and reaching for her brother, not understanding the danger. In the dream, the bear turned and rose on its hind legs and smashed a single long clawed fist down and down. Granny, no! Kuno-Ma did not speak the words aloud. His discipline held so much. Doggedly he set about controlling his breathing. Sweat rolled greasily from his armpits and buttocks. Presently he was able to hear again the iron clash of the marching legionaries and the newest stanza of their song. He worked as he had been taught to clear his mind, and would not linger on the memory of Granny's face as the bare fist smashed down to break her, or on his own failure to save her. It was not the first time the dream had come, and he did not believe it would be the last. He knew only that he would give his life to protect his sister, and that no bear in the dream or out of it would reach her while he lived. He could not find the silence again and stopped trying. Freed, his thoughts fell first on Ardakos, the mentor who had shown him what it was to be a ghost warrior. What are my birdies doing? Where is Kermie? Can't see him. Oh, you're on top of the cage. Are you up there? Okay. You're allowed up there. Just be a good boy now. Oh my goodness. Do you feel better with the air conditioning? Perked up a bit. Oh, even the birds are suffering, my God. Right, freed, his thoughts fell first on Ardakos, the mentor who had shown him what it was to be a ghost warrior. Giving him a mark to aim for that had seemed beyond all possibility to the child he had been. Ardakos had long since discarded his own kill feathers. The small Caledonian warrior marked only those kills where the combat had been single-handed against a worthy opponent. For those he bore a band of red ochre round his upper arm. There were 3, and he could name all 3 warriors and the means of their dying with each act of their life, as if they were heroes. Not one of them had been Roman, although he had slain as many legionaries as any other living warrior. Cunhamar was not certain whom he considered a worthy opponent now that the world had changed. Through all of his youth, he had dreamed of killing a certain decurion of the Thracian cavalry who rode a pied horse and was known as the scourge of the tribes from east coast to west. For so many reasons, that man's death would have been worth an ochre stripe. Then Valerius had ridden his pied horse into the steading and crushed the life from the Roman procurator in an act of blinding savagery that had sealed his return to the Iceni. Only afterwards had he declared himself the Boadicea's brother, and by then it was already too late to kill him. Thus, unwilling, Cunhamar had set aside 10 years of yearning, or at least had left it in abeyance. He had not yet said so aloud. He had not yet said so aloud in the council circle. But it seemed to him obvious that a man who had changed sides twice in his life might easily choose to do so again. For that, if for no other reason, Valerius was not fit to lead the war host if the Boadicea should not prove able. Sigfa there clearly thought otherwise, and she was not alone. A few had spoken of it openly, but it was there to be read in their eyes. The fear that the Boadicea had lost the wildfire and must soon be replaced. Many simply refused to believe it could happen, but like Sigfar, Cunhamar had seen his father broken by Rome and knew the signs. He had no idea how long it would be before the rest came to see as he saw. He only knew that it was not enough to be the Boadicea's only son. He had to prove to himself, to his sister, to those others who might doubt him, above all to the she-bear and the watching gods, that he was the obvious one, the only one to whom they could turn in adversity. Then, when Valerius stood against him, he could fight and he could kill, and the world would come to hear what kind of warrior was the Boadicea's son. It took a deal of self-control not to move at that thought. Cunhamar held himself motionless and was rewarded for it. Ahead and a little to his right, in the damp mulch of the forest's floor where small things cracked and a single leaf was large as a roundhouse, a shrew stalked, a thready earthworm. Cunhamar breathed out a long, controlled exhalation, and the shrew did not stop. Since dawn it had skirted him, wary of the stench and the unexpected warmth of his body. Then the worm had surfaced and was too good to ignore. The elders of the Caledonii gave their approval sparingly, but they would have given it now. The ultimate test of their teachings was that the small things, or large, of the forest or heath would come close without fear. Trust by the wild things. Cunhamar breathed more quietly still. His skin itched beneath the layers of grease. A ring of white lime round each eye had dried, pulling the skin into a frown. Small twigs dug into the flesh at his ankles, his hips, his ribs, his chin, all the places where his frame pressed hardest onto the forest floor. Perversely, his throat was dry and craved water at the same time as his bladder began to nag with the need to empty. The flesh of his back ached where the wounds of the flogging had not yet healed. His missing ear burned. Ahead, the shrew finished its feed, round-bellied and wet about the muzzle and breast. With the life of the worm, it prodded its way under the leaves and curled to sleep. Cunhamar catalogued in turn each of the demands of his body, and then, setting them aside, gave a good part of his attention to the pattering heartbeat and small, vicious mouth of the shrew, and strove to banish all thoughts of Valerius and everything he represented. A change in the pounding rhythm of the earth drew his gaze to the ancestors' trackway. His eyes were level with the highest point of the road on the apex of the curve that tipped down at either side to marsh and forest. Close enough for Cunamar to smell the sweat, the sandaled, studded feet of the last ranks of the 9th Legion stamped by. Living flesh impacted resonantly on leather and armour. The lungs of 100 men drew in the thickening fog and exhaled it. Rasping. 10,000 iron studs hammered the stone track, and the sound echoed off the trees onto the marsh and was sucked to silence. Marching men became iron-clad, helmeted ghosts, passing out of the bog mist and back into it, visible only for a spear's throw either side of where the Boadicea's son, at last, prepared himself to move. Then they were gone. The last men of the last cohort passed by, and the mist closed behind, and there were no more. The silence ached more than the noise had done. A night's waiting and half a morning bore the fruit they had promised. Cunamar moved his hand a hair's breadth to the left. Leaves shivered where the shrew slept and were still. Kneeling in the loam, with the night stream banished, with his pulse clear and light in his head, and the breath of the she-bear warming his heart, Cunamar put his 2 thumbs to his lips and made the sound of a bittern, booming. Ulla joined him, and Scaros and his girl cousin of the northern Iceni, whose name Cunamar had never learned. They were barely recognisable, hidden behind the skull patterns of white lime on grey woad. Each smiled, a flash of white teeth that proved them not yet ghosts. Full of the she-bear, fired in breath and heartbeat, filled with the promise of honour and the need for vengeance, they stepped into the frog that shrouded the trackway and were invisible. After half a morning of lying still, to move at all was an act of will. To run silently across the last spear's length of forest onto the trackway and up behind the last 4 marching legionaries was worthy of a winter's tale in its own right. The stench of beer and pig grease warned the rear guard of the 9th that they were under attack, but not soon enough. 4 hands caught 4 helmeted heads and drew them back. 4 blades cut through fog and skin and cartilage. 4 men screamed pain and warnings and death through severed windpipes that transmitted no sound. Like culled cattle, they bellowed soundlessly and died as fast. their eyes rolled up in their heads to show the whites beneath, and their limbs fell limp. Oh, my back's starting to hurt now. I'm really tired all of a sudden too. Oh, grizzle, grizzle, grizzle. Moan, moan, moan. On we go, on we go. Oh, I don't know how I do it sometimes, people of Earth. I really don't know how I do it. Making those was hard work too. They're kind of sweet. Blood flowed in blackening cataracts on the grey, cold pavings of the ancestors' stone way. 4 ghosts stepped free and were guided fast away by Ermid and Gunovar and Lannis, who joined together to see that the dead of both sides were not left to wander lost in the cold mist. Valerius had asked for that, and no one had spoken against him. Other warriors came forward from the trees. I hope you're not fighting, Kermy boy. Are you being naughty, Kermy? Are you being my naughty boy? I know you're being naughty, the two of you. Look at you like butter wouldn't melt in your beaks. You be good boys now. I know, it's getting cold in here. Mummy might turn it off for a little bit. It's got cold now. We'll turn it off and then we'll put it back on when it gets stifling again. Pretty bitty boys. Pretty handsome boys. They really are very good, the two of them. Right, where were we? Other warriors came forward from the trees and helped support the bodies and catch the dead men's shields and their packs. You can just see them over my shoulder. Yes. So that nothing might clatter onto the stones and alert the legionaries marching ahead to the slaughter behind. I'm watching you, Kermy boy. With care, the dead were carried aside and propped by the trees and left to be stripped of their weapons by the children and grandmothers later, when it was safe. Already the cycle had begun again. 4 more ghosted warriors had stepped out from their places in the trees and, as greyly as silently, caught the helmeted heads of the last 4 men and cut the breath from their throats before they knew they were dying. I guess it's very quick and in that instance kind of merciful. Still not pleasant having your throat cut, I would imagine. Things that happen to human beings. The things we do to each other. It's astonishing. Kermy says, what about all the things you do to the birdies, Mama dear? Yes, that's evil too. But you know, we do have to eat, Kermy. Although no one's going to eat you. I can guarantee no one's going to eat you or little Bo. The remaining men of the 9th marched on, caught in their own rhythms of flesh on leather and iron on stone. Far to the front, the horns of the first cohort beckoned, promising with each new refrain tents already pitched and cooking fires lit and wineskins broached. The reward offered to those who marched in the rear guard of any column was to arrive in the evening to a camp already built. Thus enticed, the men of the third cohort marched into a mist that opened 3 rows in front and closed behind. The forest to their right was as quiet as it had been since they started, and the bog to their left as improbably innocent, and neither was enough to make them break step and look behind. The third row died, and the fourth. The warriors who had carried away the bodies of the first legionaries sped forward to make kills of their own, running barefooted on the paving slabs, slick with bear grease, protected from the curses of ghosts and the iron cuts of living men by woad and the power of the she-bear. 20 marching rows were taken in silence. 80 men died, and there were still thousands marching. The entirety of the she-bear, all 47 warriors, were up and running on the road, pushing their luck with each footfall, taking greater risks with each cut of the knife. Bloodily wet in his coating of woad grease, Kunomar propped a body against a tree and ran forward between 2 dying men. Ulla was on his left and the girl cousin on his right. Skeros, a little late lowering his man to the earth, caught up as they reached the next row of marching legionaries. Breathless, a little flustered, not quite riding the power of the bear, Skeros fumbled his hold. His knife scored flesh and the edge of one pumping vessel, but not the ridged pipe of the trachea. I think it's here, isn't it? It's lower down. Whew. The legionary screeched like a throttled hen, and his death was neither neat nor fast. The 3 men of his row were too late to profit from the warning, but the ones in front had time to call out an alarm and draw their short stabbing swords and shoulder their shields and turn at least halfway to face the mob of grey slate phantoms who came howling at them from the mist, all pretense at secrecy abandoned. The rearmost 4 men died messily, inflicting wounds before they did so. The next 4 achieved a kill, cutting the number of the she-bear to 46. In the time between, Kunomar put his bloodied fingers to his lips, filled his lungs with bog air and let out a single mind-numbing whistle that reached at least to the head of the cohort. Lest it be misconstrued or unheard, he took from his belt a cow's horn lipped in copper and brayed a note harsh as a legionary mule that rocked the mare and silenced the crows gathering on the margins of the forest. That done, he paused to wipe his knife blade free of the gobbets of flesh that had clung to it and, howling the name of the newly dead she-bear as a fresh battle cry, hurled himself joyfully into battle. The Boadicea and those waiting for her heard a whistle, and then an ox horn pierced the fog. At that signal, 4 axes finished what they had begun before the legion's march. The oak that fell across the trackway as the last note sounded was broad as a man is long and thickly branched. It killed 3 of the 4 men passing under it, and crushed the legs of the 4th, so that he was an easy target for a sling stone. Briaca sent the stone, aiming for the soft part of his skull where the bones meet above the ear. There had been a time when she could split a held hair at 50 paces. That time was not now, but half a morning's practice had restored enough of the old skill to hit a trapped man less than a spear's length away. Among a clatter of thrown spears and slung stones, hers hit close enough to where it was sent, and she made her second kill in 2 days, and heard it cheered by the youths around her, as if it were a victory in itself. Dubornus was at her side. He too had once been whole, until the ravages of Rome had seduced him to the sling and the knife. She felt his hand on her shoulder. "It'll come with time," he said quietly. "For now, what we do doesn't have to be glorious or honourable, only enough to teach warriors who have held their first blade for less than a month how to fight." Valerius had said exactly that in the council meetings of the night, and Briaca had repeated it to the war host. This battle is a training ground. Don't expect heroism. Only do your best to survive. It was Longinus who had said, "Even if you cut off the rear part of the legion, it won't be easy." The centurions of the night have all seen action in the Germanies. They know how to fight. As soon as they realize they're on their own, they'll take command and try to hold order until help arrives. Don't expect them to give their lives away. Longinus had impressed Briaca more each time she met him. Her brother's sole friend was quiet and thoughtful, and when he spoke, which was rarely, it was to good effect. With his warning in her ears, she had watched the glitter of mounted officers riding at the head of the column, and marked the harder, more knowing faces of the centurions as they passed. These were the men who had recognized the possibility of ambush long before it came, and might have seen the part-cut trees swaying at intervals along the margins of the trackway, ready to fall with 2 more blows of the axe. It was for these men that she had insisted the chippings be cleared as the axes created them, and the ruined trunks wrapped around in moss and lichens. For these two, The best slingers had been stationed, watching for the marks of rank and authority, with orders to target them soon and early. They were not soon enough, and Longinus was proved entirely right. Deprived of all contact with senior officers, the 12 centurions trapped on the wrong side of the fallen oak took rapid command of their men. Startlingly fast, they drew order out of chaos. A dozen of the legionaries nearest Briaca turned, facing their shields to form a roof against falling spears. It was an obvious move for men who had not served in the West and did not know that sling stones were aimed for the unshielded knees of those who lifted their shields to protect their faces and heads, crippling them as effectively as if they had been hamstrung. Somebody knew it further up the line. Briaca heard frantic orders bellowed down the ragged column. The exposed men were already falling, but one group higher up were making better use of their shields. Leaving the new formation to Ardachos and those who fought with him, she ran between the trees towards the source of the shouting. Oak branches stabbed at her, leafing hazel slapped her face. She came level with a group of 8 men who had formed a ring, kneeling with 6 shields held outwards and 2 above. And she could see no place where a pebble could pass through between the shields, still less a spear. From the centre came the bull's bellow of a centurion, passing orders down the line. Already other 8s were forming. Spent spears glanced off the abrased shields and skittered uselessly into the mere. Dubornos was close to Briaca's right shoulder. He had not been flogged as she had, but Rome's inquisitors had ruined him long before that. For the past 8 years, the only weapon he could bear with his right hand had been a sling. He had practiced harder and for longer than anyone she knew, and was breathtakingly good. Without turning, she said, "If I part the shields, can you at least wound the centurion in the centre? If I can see him, I can kill him." Anyone else would have grinned saying that. Dubornos had never been light-hearted. He carried too much guilt and grief for that. He slid a stone into his sling and circled his waist fluidly. "If you can do something to lower the shield with the black swans on it, it would give me the easiest target." The black swans faced each other on either side of crossed thunderbolts, painted scarlet on black, with the centurion's left pointing chevron below. Oh, that hurts. Briaca could see the wind-burned skin of the man whose mark they were. His eyes looked momentarily over the rim of his shield and were hidden again. She said, "We should be mounted for this," and ran out, holding her spear before her as if she were hunting boar. The tip caught the left hand of the 2 swans, which was inmost on the shield, and drove through the bull's hide to lodge in the laminated wood behind. Briaca thrust her whole weight in and then wrenched back, snagging the shield in its wake. The spear twisted in her hands and cracked and broke. A slingshot blurred at the edge of her vision. The wall of scarlet thunderbolts swayed and parted. Then her own private thunderbolt punched her in the back, between the shoulder blades, where the flesh was most damaged. A scream split the air, and she knew it as hers in the infinite moment before she fell. Some time before she hit the paved rock of the trackway, hands caught her and held her and carried her. Some of them remembered not to touch her back. The pain in her shoulder was astonishing, like a new wound breaking open. It's interesting that I've got pain back on my shoulder blade here just before we got to this part of the story. I haven't read this book before, so I couldn't have anticipated that that would be another Jungian synchronicity people of Earth. But it really does hurt, like someone punched me in the back too. The pain in her shoulder was astonishing, like a new wound breaking open. Someone whimpered, childlike. It seemed not to be her. When she was sure of that, Briaca opened her eyes. Dubornos's face loomed above hers. He was not whimpering, but swearing and weeping together. Tears made shining tracks on his cheeks. He looked 10 years older than he had done when she ran past him to break the shield ring. Never, he said, never, never, never did I think you would do that. Why couldn't you throw your God-cursed spear like anyone else who values life above stupid displays of heroics? We have to survive. That's all. You of all people have nothing to prove here. There were too many people too close to answer that, and a place on her shoulder that burned as if she had taken a sword thrust, which seemed unlikely. The whimpering continued, and still she could not place the source. She sat up and looked around. A young, copper-haired youth knelt nearby, with a bruise flaring crimson across his mouth and wild, white-rimmed eyes. The hair hung in furls by his left ear, as if the war braids had been forcibly ripped out, and a livid welt at his right wrist showed where a sling had recently been stripped from him. He stared at Dubornos as if the singer were more dangerous than all the avenging armies of Rome. The whimpering was his. To him, Briaca said, "Was it your sling stone that hit me?" His face was answer enough. He was too terrified to speak. She said, "What's your name?" Dubornos answered for him. Buranos. He was one of those who failed Kunamal's spear trials. He trained instead as a slinger, not well enough. Briaca said, "We could list for him the failures of our youth, but it would take longer than we have." She tried to stand and succeeded on the second attempt. She was deeper in the forest than she had been, shielded by trees from the track. Sounds of battle came clearly enough, but not the detail. She asked, "Did we break the 8 ring?" Dubornos looked down at his hands. His sling still hung from his wrist, cradling a pebble as if it were the easiest thing in the world to walk with the pebble held, not something youths practiced for months without success. "No, the centurion is dead and one other, but when you fell we brought you clear, and the ring reformed. I set a dozen singers to keep them occupied. If we leave it too long, they'll remember that attack is better than defence and charge us instead. Then we have to break them open again before they begin to think." Someone offered Briaca a sling and she took it. "Buranos can stand between us. Set anyone with a spear who knows how to throw it to aim at one of the shields. We can direct the stones through to the centre if they can make a big enough gap." Back on the track, with fighting on either side, the Black Swan shield was central now in a ring of 5, with one held as roof shield above. Young warriors hidden in the tree line with slings took time for target practice. Pebbles rang on bull's hide and iron. The sound was lost in the other noises of battle. A dozen youths with spears stepped past the shelter of the trees to take foot on the margins of the track. The legionaries, trapped within the ring, saw the danger. Momentarily, they pulled their shields tighter until the edges overlapped, and there were no gaps at all, like a woodlouse curling. And then one in the centre, seeing what might come, gave 3 words as an order, and smoothly, beautifully, as if by an act of the gods, the entire ring unfolded and became a line. For a heartbeat, perhaps 2, the legionaries were not moving. Each man looking sideways to see if he remained in line with his neighbours. Sorry, I'm being nagged by spirit. Sorry, keep being shown images of a piece of ebony wood I have, and being shown this broken mother of pearl shell that actually Kermie broke when he newly arrived. He didn't mean to, he doesn't know what it was, but he knocked it down, and I rescued the bits of mother of pearl that had still stayed in formation, and they're of egrets, I believe. They keep flashing to me, you need to make that, showing me cutting the ebony and inlaying the mother of pearl. Won't be that simple because it's on a concave shape, so I'll have difficulty inlaying since they're not flat. But they're at me for the last 3 days, so while I'm reading to you, I'm getting visions of this ebony wood and me carefully inlaying it. And I guess that's my next project. They keep showing it to me, so they're insisting. It's amazing, isn't it? How I get nagged by the spirits now. That didn't used to happen. I used to come to things on my own volition and my own time frame, take my sweet baby Moses time, and now I get pressurised. It can be a bit annoying, people of Earth. Anyway, I will make that. I think it will be lovely when I make it. Very lovely. going to be whether I succeeded it or not, though, is going to be the problem. A male voice just murmured, "You will succeed." Okay, thank you, Spirit, whoever you are. Honestly. Right, where were we? The junior officer was in the centre and had taken his centurion's helmet. The horse hair crest waved black in the wind. He looked along the line and drew breath to shout a fresh order. Briaca was before him. Now! Dubornos' pebble was too small to see, only a whisper of marsh mist as it passed her. A legionary whose elbow had been carelessly shown screamed and pitched forward, the bones of his forearm shattered. The men who flanked him were already running. They jumped their comrade's fallen body, and when they landed they moved together, filling the gap where he had been. A spear angled low beneath the shield of one, and he had to jump to avoid it. The second time, Briaca was waiting for the flash of flesh at his throat. Buranos was ahead of her. She felt the swing of his throw and saw the legionary stagger. Her own stone was aimed lower and broke the man's kneecap. A spear jammed into the shield of his running mate. Thrust by a rust-haired girl who, if she was not Buranos' twin, was his close kin. A sword peeled skin off her forearm and she jumped back. Another warrior, careless of death, stepped in to jab a spear into the face of a legionary who died in the moment when he realized he faced a dozen warriors alone. Briaca reached for her sword and swore violently as the first two strokes with it pulled at muscles that were still stiffened from her night's combat against Valerius. Then she warmed into the movement, and for a time there was no room for doubt or the sluggishness of pain, only action and the need to survive, and with luck to show an example that was not all bad. In a lifetime of untidy skirmishes, it was the messiest. At the end, Briaca lowered her blade. There was blood on it, but only from cutting the throat of a man already down. She leaned back on a tree, and the press of it down the length of her spine was almost welcome. Maybe that's what I need to do. Got real pain in my back. I don't know why. Probably from carrying the heavy groceries. But it only just started when I started reading the story, which is odd. We don't own that. Send it back to its original source, shall we? Sometimes I'm wondering if it's spiritual attacks lately. It's odd. Not glorious, but we lost no one. It could have been worse. Dubornos spoke from his place at her shoulder. He's looking at you, kids. Mummy is very well aware what you're capable of. Some of you who come to my channel. Not paranoid either, alas and alack. Dubona spoke from his place at his shoulder. Together, he and Briaca watched the youth, Buranos, run forward to the rust-haired girl and embrace her in the middle of the trackway as if they had fought a final battle. Not a minor skirmish that cut the tail tip of a serpent whose head still waited unawares and could smash them without thought. Briaca said, "It needs to be immeasurably better before we can take on a full legion." She wiped a slick of sweat from her face. On either side along the trackway, a dozen similarly disorganized skirmishes still raged, as warriors of all ages engaged legionaries in rings or lines. Plumed helmets in black and white reared at intervals above the lines of the battle. She saw one in red that reached higher than the others and watched it fall. Spears arced over and vanished into the mere. Exhausted, Briaca sat on the turf and thought of Valerius and what he would say at the lack of discipline in the warriors of her war host. She thought of Ardakos and how the she-bears he had led for 10 years in the Western Wall had not needed the discipline of rank and fear, but had followed the fire and the heart of the bear with Ardakos as their leader in spirit more than in flesh. She thought of the warriors of Mona, and the years that went into the training of them, so that each took to the field in absolute trust of their own skill and those around them. She looked at the wavering line of untested, untrained warriors and considered what it would take to bring them to that. She felt the weight of her blade in the palm of her hand and the numbness that had been in her since the start of the day's fighting. And she ached almost to weeping for the loss of the sharp, exciting pain that drew her into battle and sang inside of immortality and of stories by the fire. This concludes chapter 10. I shall be back no doubt tomorrow with chapter 11. By the gods, I'm exhausted now. I need to rest, people of Earth. Goddess bless wherever you are on planet Earth or in all other interdimensionalities, floating amongst the 10 Sephirot of the Kabbalistic tree of life, from Ein Sof Or down to Malkut, back up again. Take good care, be of good cheer. Remember to never ever let the bastards grind you down. And tomorrow is Christmas Eve. So to those of you of German, Dutch or Scandinavian background, Merry Christmas, or in German, Herzliche Weihnachten. Have a wonderful Christmas Eve. May it be peaceful and spent with those you love and whom love you just as much in return, and treat you with honour and kindness and sweetness and joy and delight. Accept nothing more and nothing less, people of earth.